In the previous video, I said that my body was ready to get into a fighter jet, and that's because I took the CIMA test to verify it. Because today, after that, we're gonna get into a C-101, but not just any C-101, we're gonna do it in one from the Patrulla Águila with the best pilots in Spain. Let's go. What you're about to see is a dream come true, and the best part is that I've been able to document it step by step so you can experience this with me. Flying in the jet that has trained Spanish pilots for 4 decades, experiencing the full sensation of wearing a G-suit, understanding the ejection process that would save me in case of an emergency, and flying in close formation with other planes while we performed aerobatics.
Let's go.
The C-101 Aviojet is the training aircraft that Spain has been using since 1980 to train all its pilots. It was conceived from its design as a trainer aircraft. It has a turbofan engine in the center of the fuselage with the intakes on the sides. And all the pilots who have flown it agree on something?
It's an aircraft that we call noble. That's what really makes it unique. It lacks engine power compared to other squadrons that have planes with bigger engines. But the way it flies, that noble way, forgiving mistakes like flying well in formation with other planes, makes up for that lack of engine power.
Like every plane designed for combat pilots, it has its ejection seat, which the pilot could use to save his life if he needs to escape from the plane. But, in addition, the ejection seat of this plane would literally put my life in my own hands. The ejection process is activated when the pilot pulls the ring located between his legs. From the moment the pilot pulls the ring until he is safely out of the plane, less than 1.5 seconds goes by. First, a cartridge is activated that makes the seat slide up out of the cockpit. Once it's out, rockets under the seat are activated, pushing the pilot even harder upward. Since this 2-seater plane has seats that eject to different sides, the front ejects to the right and the rear to the left, so that the pilots don't collide in the air. In current 2-seater planes, the pilot's ejection can be programmed to be sequential, meaning that the ejection of one pilot would trigger the ejection of the other after a few milliseconds. However, since the C-101 is quite an old plane, this is not the case in this aircraft. Both pilots have to eject individually, which means that if something happened, I would be responsible for pulling my own handle to save myself. I won't be flying out. Listen.
One of the biggest problems is that you're making them look down.
If you tilt your neck to look for the ring, and at that moment you pull with the great acceleration of your body, it would break your neck. That's why it's extremely important in case you have to eject to be upright and looking forward. Your legs should go between these straps so that in the event of ejection, they pull your legs tightly against the seat to make sure you don't have them stretched out. Since at the speed you shoot out of the cockpit upwards, your legs would be severed if they hit any part of the cockpit. In case the pilot has ejected at a high altitude, he could start breathing the oxygen supplied through this small bottle, which can also be activated during normal flight to breathe 100% pure oxygen. Before any flight, a small safety pin that blocks the ejection seat handle must be removed. This pin prevents the seat from firing accidentally while the plane is on the ground. It is only removed when everything is ready to taxi and then fly. That's why at this moment, I show the pin to the mechanic as a sign that my seat is now armed and ready to be ejected if necessary. Another important thing about the plane is the Zane, or as we all commonly call it, the anti-G suit. This suit, used in fighter jets, increases human tolerance to G-forces during maneuvers when the nose is raised. When this happens, everything in the plane, including your body, feels a compressive force. Your body has rigid bones and muscles that tense up to keep your position. But the problem is that the blood in your body also feels a force and starts to flow toward your feet, leaving your brain. This is where the anti-G suit comes into play. When the plane detects that you're enduring more than 2 Gs, it starts sending pressurized air through this tube. The suit compresses your lower body to stop blood from pooling in your legs. You also need to use a special breathing technique while wearing it. It's about exhaling the air little by little while tensing all your muscles, from your abdomen down to your feet. Trying to push against the suit when it inflates. After trying it in flight, I assure you it's incredible to simultaneously feel it and the Gs. As mentioned earlier, I have flown in a C-101 with the Águila Squadron. It typically consisted of 7 planes, but recently 6 have been utilized. As you'll see later, the separation distance between the planes can practically be measured in centimeters. The show from the ground is impressive, but I guarantee you that from above it's tremendous. The leader of the formation is the one who maintains the course and is constantly monitoring speed and altitude. And the other planes, all they do is keep a distance from their reference plane. The leader ensures everyone flies within the correct parameters. Over the radio, they still call out when the maneuvers start so that everyone is prepared. That is, all the other planes don't look ahead, but at their reference plane and keep their distance from it. In such a way that they all move as if they were one, doing exactly what the leader does. They blindly trust that he has the correct parameters and the right course. In the Águila patrol, Águila number 1 is the leader we discussed. Águila number 2 is the right wingman and flies slightly behind to the right of the leader. Águila 4 takes the slot position, flying just behind and slightly below the leader, closing the diamond formation. Águila 5 is the solo. The pilot in charge of pushing the plane to its limits separates from the rest to perform solo aerobatic maneuvers so people can see this plane reach its limits. He serves as the left wingman with the rest of the team, as there hasn't been an Águila 3 in the Águila patrol formations for several years. Águila number 6 is the right pair located at the rear and right of the formations. Águila number 7 is its counterpart, the left pair. These two are the ones who perform maneuvers like the corkscrew or the flip-flap. Before each flight, there's a briefing where everything important about that day is discussed, the weather report is given, and anything else to keep in mind is mentioned. On the day I visited, the topic of several people being in the rear cockpit was discussed. They especially emphasized that we shouldn't touch anything at all and mentioned the possibility that we might get dizzy. In this briefing, they recreate the show with radio messages, visualize the maneuvers mentally, and call out the messages to make sure that all the pilots remember what they're going to do that day.
Visual, aligning San Pedro for inverted crossing now.
After smoke.
Out now, out.
5, speed.
0-5 going down, 5 out.
At last, the long-awaited moment arrived. It was time to don the hazmat suit, helmet, and mask. Let me tell you, putting it on is quite difficult as it must fit very tightly around your legs and abdomen. With a bunch of buttons and zippers, the helmet already has the mask attached, fitted exactly to your head size. After this, they would give us a life vest with a small beacon and other emergency systems in case we had to eject. With everything prepared, we headed to the plane. My heart rate gradually increased as the moment approached. When I got to the seat, I had to strap myself in tightly with the different harnesses so I wouldn't move during all the maneuvers we were going to go through. There were going to be positive G's, but also negative G's that would throw me against the ceiling. Something important is that since it's a trainer aircraft, the controls in the front and rear cockpits are connected, which means that both the throttle lever and the control stick that my pilot would be moving would also move in my seat, and under no circumstances could I interfere. Once everything was ready, it was finally time to take off. And what better way to do it than in formation?
Release the brakes now!
In that instant, witnessing a formation take off from the inside, I became truly thrilled. It was an unbelievable experience. And it's not just that, but from the inside, everything is much more intense. You're in a small cockpit, strapped in, breathing through a mask, feeling vibrations as the plane takes off.
How was the first impression? It's crazy. I'm about to cry. That's because of all the effort you've put in. In the end, everything is rewarded.
Going back to the takeoff, notice how the dog moves from the side to the center, closing the diamond, because that's his position. The first thing I want to say is that from the ground, when you see them flying, it looks like the planes are small, but when they're flying next to you, you realize they're actually quite big. The length of a 101 is 12.5 meters, about the same as a regular bus. Just so you get the idea. First, we attempt an inverted maneuver. If you observe the G's, the nose slightly rises to turn around. This slightly increases the G's, however the same process would need to be repeated with negative G's. That caught me by surprise. Then they put me upside down again in the Plus Ultra maneuver where we would be flying with another plane right underneath us. It was an extremely overcast day, like the scene in Top Gun where the iconic line is delivered. With very low visibility, so we could hardly do any maneuvers. Almost everything was formation passes. It was a shame not to have had a clear sky to do the normal rehearsal, but today, with the sky completely clear, we've come back to fly. And today we are going to do the whole routine. The Águila Squadron's solo performance was lacking, as I was told I couldn't just stick with those passes. From the Air and Space Army, they suggested I come back the following week to experience a full rehearsal. Of course, I had to prepare myself mentally because I would be getting on the Águila 5, the solo plane, to do a full exhibition.
The most demanding part is what the solo does, what the Águila 5 does. It really pushes the structural limits of the plane. The solo usually pulls 6.5 or 7 Gs, getting almost to the structural limits of the plane.
The experience would be unforgettable. It was time to gear up once more. Also today, the anti-G suit would play a leading role, as you will see next. The weather was perfect. Today was the day. After takeoff, the planes separated for a warm-up. That was helpful, as we practiced several maneuvers I would need to perform later, allowing me to get familiar with the sensations.
Get ready. 3, 2,
1, go, good. Do you see this need to fill in? Good, right? Yes.
There. If you notice, we're right at the edge of the stall, okay? You have to feel the plane. So I take control. I'm going to ask the plane, okay? Do you see that vibration? That vibration means the plane is about to stall. If I ask for more, look, do you see it? Yes.
Also, in this first part of the flight, while Rafa was taking the controls, he let me move the control stick and throttle so I could get a feel for the plane. So it's not just that I've flown in a 101, but that I've actually flown a 101 myself. After this, we joined the other planes to start the show. Look, we were the last plane to arrive at the formation. And since we were the left wing, Eagle 7 left us a space so we could get in between the formation and take our position. In the Eagle Patrol, the first part involves flying together, performing aerobatics in formation. We start with a loop. It's incredible to see how the ground starts to appear from above, while you see all the planes next to you. Let me tell you that from inside the plane, I wasn't really aware of all the formation changes happening around me. I focused on 3 things: enjoying myself, not getting dizzy, and withstanding the forces. While we were all doing formation aerobatics in this first part, we weren't experiencing many forces. Gee, the thing is, they were sustained for several seconds, and that's something we're not used to. But honestly, this was the time to enjoy doing aerobatics with several jets in formation. At the end of this first part of the show, it was time for the break, where we would separate and perform maneuvers apart from the others. This is when things got tough. Get ready to see me suffer. Before the flight, Rafa, my pilot, said if at any point I couldn't handle it, I could say so, and we'd stop the acrobatics. But what was clear was that I had to reach my limit. I would have to suffer.
It's that moment when you feel completely incapacitated. You question if you want to keep going because you can't take it anymore. But that... a limit, yes.
Yes, it really has to be a limit. Very...
No, you don't have to set it yourself. I mean, it's not a limit. It's when you say up to here, if I say up to here, and that's when it's set. So, they shouldn't have any problem, but it's true that you have to put up with it. Of course,
today's a challenge.
For you.
Yes, okay. The first maneuver was the 0-speed one, where the plane suddenly pulls up and loses all its speed until it reaches 0, and it starts to stall. The feeling inside the plane is spectacular, feeling how you start to float. It surprised me. Can you see my expression?
Let's move to the side, okay?
What a crazy thing, huh?
Oh.
Five and going. So? After this, we did a slow roll. This maneuver is very complicated because you have to work the pedals, and it was these maneuvers where we went upside down that made me feel dizzy. Especially in those where we went from negative G's to positive G's.
Let's go up. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. The bad thing is that the next maneuver was a series of consecutive rolls. Next was the Cobra, and everyone had warned me that I was going to pass out. The good part is that it was the last maneuver that could knock me out. If I got through that, I would have made it. The maneuver starts with a 4-point roll, which means a very slow roll. Then you level out for a couple of seconds and pull the nose up with a G-force spike to turn 180 degrees up, and then bring the nose down with a positive G-force maneuver. The plane would go into a dive, gaining speed to start an aggressive 360-degree turn for almost 30 seconds at about 5 Gs. And from there, we would come out lined up to cross paths with the other planes that would come in tight formation, passing just below them and pulling up vertically. The downside of this maneuver is that we ended up crossing paths with the other planes, so we absolutely had to keep going to make it on time. Even if I had lost consciousness. Ready?
Now, that must be scheduled by times.
That's simple.
This one doesn't have much of a story. Okay, let's go. And
For the Cobra.
alright, there are only 2 rounds left.
Hold on. Huh?
Hold on, get ready to squeeze. It's coming, that's it, come on, Sergio. Come on.
Come on, but it's nothing.
There you go.
Come on, let's go.
Wait, now. And we ended up outside.
Good, right?
I'm at a loss for words after that experience. It was undoubtedly the most intense 90 seconds of my life. During the turn, I gradually noticed my vision getting blurrier. That's why I warned Rafa that I might lose consciousness, but after thinking about it calmly, I never actually blacked out. 3 things got to me. The first is that we had been doing aerobatic flying for almost an hour, and I was pretty dizzy. So squeezing that hard for several seconds was very difficult under those conditions. Secondly, we had just completed a negative G maneuver. When you're at the top of the Cobra, you're experiencing about 2 negative Gs, and then you go into the aggressive turn. As I mentioned, transitioning from negative to positive Gs significantly impairs performance. That's why I wasn't at my best from the start of the turn. The turn was sustained for almost half a minute, longer than any previous high G turn we had done. But since it only lasted a few seconds, I handled it perfectly. The problem with the Cobra maneuver was being there for almost 30 seconds after this maneuver. I got really dizzy. Between the effort of fighting the dizziness I had and all the extreme sensations I was experiencing, my body didn't know how to react. Luckily, there was a minute without much going on where I could take off my mask and blast the air conditioning straight to my face. I could choose not to show this and say that I handled it perfectly, but the truth is that I had a couple of pretty tough minutes. I was close to vomiting my breakfast, which goes to show that these kinds of exhibitions demand a great deal of preparation. Because let me remind you that I was just sitting on the plane with the only concern of surviving. But the pilots are doing extremely complex things while enduring the same forces as I am. Honestly, I'm left speechless. After this, there was the plus ultra maneuver left. In this last one would go behind and one would go in mirror right above. Inverted. And yes, oh surprise, it was my turn to go inverted again. By then, I had mostly recovered, so I began waving at the plane beneath me. And right after this, it was time for the final break, where all the planes would split up in front of the audience. Normally, in any squadron, this final break is what organizes all the planes for landing. But the Patrulla Águila is the only one in the world that flies jet planes and lands them, all of them in formation. So we got back together to land.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you can hear me. It's crazy, man. Incredible experience. Nothing in life compares.
When I touched down, I got really emotional, and when the adrenaline wore off, I started to tear up a little. I had just fulfilled a dream, not just flying in a jet, but flying with the Águila Squadron. The memory I take with me is undoubtedly the most unforgettable and best experience of my life. But not just because of the flight, but because of the quality of the people I've been able to meet. I have received a lesson in humility and teamwork. You see, in aviation, something exceptional happens. Teams only work when there is absolute trust among all the members. It's very easy to understand in this case. It would be impossible to perform such precise maneuvers so close to each other if a pilot didn't fully trust the one next to him. But that trust isn't limited to the fellow pilots flying. It's also essential with the team of mechanics and other members on the ground. For my part, I can only say that the treatment I received from everyone has been exemplary, as I told the pilots. Maybe someday I'll forget the G-forces I felt that day, but I'll never forget the way I was treated and the feeling of being one of the team. Thank you.